So today we're doing similar to what we did last week, except today we're talking about the knees. All right. Now your knees are going to be a little bit different from your spine because all they do is move this way. If they're moving any other way, you have some problems. All right. And the way your knees put together is it's just held together by the ligaments and all the tendons going through there. All right. So the way you're going to strengthen your knees and build the flexibility in them is I'm going to show you some stretches, but a lot of the actual building strength and stability within your knee is going to come from doing short movements and slowly. All right. So we're going to start with a couple exercises, and then we're going to switch over and I'll show you some stretches. All right. One of the first exercises I used to do with you is either like walking backwards on the treadmill, pushing the belt with your feet, or dragging a sled backwards. Because what this does is it doesn't overload your knees at all. The only stress on it is the stress that you're putting on it, as opposed to whenever you're doing most other movements, you're gonna feel like just going like that, it's putting the weight of my body weight on my knees. And if my knees can't handle that, then they're gonna give. All right. So whenever I'm doing legs, I like to start out with either pulling the sled backwards, walking backwards, kind of like that, really rolling from heel to toe and squeezing that front leg, just helping to warm up the knees. All right. Next thing you can do is going to be step downs. You can do this on box, you can do it on a slant board like this, or you can just do it with your body weight by holding up one foot. But all you're doing is tapping your heel to the ground, slowly and controlled, just using this leg. All right. You can start out short like that if this is all you can do. But once you get better, you can go farther and farther, and you can even get up to the point of doing it on a box where you go down, slow and controlled, tap, and then back up. Okay? Obviously, most people aren't going to be able to do that. It's going to take some practice to get to. Next thing is sissy squats, which is similar to that, except you're doing both legs. All right. So all you're doing is coming up on your toes and leaning forward with your knees. Normally, I would do this to a box, and you just come forward, tap, and back up. And just like with the other exercise, the better you get, the lower you can go. Eventually, you can get to the point where you're going all the way to the ground. All right. Now, if you're having trouble with your knees, another area that might be causing that would be your calf and your lower leg, your tibialis or your calf. All right. So to work and stretch your calves, I would recommend using a slant board or something like this, and just almost like calf raises, except you want to try to put a little bit more pressure on whichever leg it is that's tight. So like my right ankle has very little range of motion in it, just because I sprained it so many times. So before I start doing anything for legs, I need to go through and do a lot of this just to get the range of motion back in my ankle so that I can actually go and do squats or something like that. All right. One of the other muscles that attaches and the tendon runs through your knee is your hamstring. All right. So to work on the hamstring, for starters, you can use a band, just like this. And hook it around your ankle. And there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can do it starting like that and then coming back. I like to use one of the handles from the cable machine to hook it on there, because that way it's a little more stable. It doesn't start rolling up your leg as you're doing this. So to kind of get around that, you can start off higher and then come back to there. All right, just like that. This is good because it works on your balance on one leg, although you can hold on to something to support yourself if you need to. All right, and that is a good way of starting for hamstring curls. Obviously, there's other exercises that are that same exact motion. You can do it on the TRX straps, you can do it on the machine, although I know some people who are bigger are very comfortable laying on their stomach, so that's a good place for them to start. You can also do it on the ground in like a glute bridge, in that kind of position, and if you want to up it, you can go just one leg at a time for the glute bridge, and that's also going to help to build stability and strength in your core. All right. One of the other things is doing a split squat. I'm going to demonstrate this on the box, but as you get better, you can do this lower and lower to the point where you actually have your back foot up on the box for making it even harder. But if what we're going for is trying to get your knees to the point where they feel good, you're probably going to want to start on a box. You don't want to be jumping in too hard. All right? So what we're doing is you're putting one foot up and you're leaning forward and trying to get as much bend in your knee as possible. If you can, you want to try to get your entire calf along your entire hamstring. All right? When you're doing this, your back leg stays straight. You're also going to feel a stretch in this hip flexor, which is probably going to help with your back too, because for a lot of people, their hip flexors are really tight just from how much time they spend sitting. And by doing this, it's going to help to get it stretched out. All right. So this is an exercise as much as it is a stretch. So you can just lower yourself into it and back up and do this for reps. All right. As you get better, you can start using a lower and lower box and eventually get to the point where you're doing it on the ground and going into almost a full split with it. But this is going to put a lot more of your own body weight on your knee than it would if you were doing it elevated. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you some stretches. I already showed you the calf stretch using the slant board. Most people already know that. You can do it against a wall. One of the better ways to do it is if you can get your toes up on something, just do that, and it's gonna get you more up by your knee, which is where it's likely causing knee problems. But if you're also trying to get your ankles with it, you can kind of bend like that and just put your weight there, and that's gonna help with stretching more of your lower calf than your upper calf. All right. So for building mobility in your knee, so I've worked with a lot of people that their knees only bend to here. They have trouble going farther than that. What you want to do is you want to kind of start like that, and then you're just going to slowly try to sit down and let your body weight kind of force you into bending that leg. All right. A lot of people feel it right here, which means that it's their quads that are tight. So they need to stretch their quads before they can get into that full range of motion. It's either their quads or just their hamstrings and their calves are too thick. Usually not with muscle like they would like it to be, and that's preventing them from getting that full range of motion. All right. But by working on it like this, you can get to the point where you're sitting all the way down on it. All right. Stretch for your quad, that will help with that, is also going to help with your hip flexor. All I'm doing is I'm putting my foot up here like I had it. I'm stepping forward and I'm trying to pull that hip forward. All right. So this is stretching my quad and my hip flexor here. All right. From the side, you can see starting here, then pulling that hip forward. kind of trying to lean back, and I feel that the whole way through this leg. Okay. You also might need to stretch your hamstrings. Most people know how to do that. You touch your toes. One of the better ways to do it though, so you don't need to worry so much about keeping your back straight or anything, is if you just put your foot up on something and kind of relax into it. So you can see my hips are kind of rotated that way to start. And as my leg starts loosening up, I'm gonna pull this back hip backwards like that. And that's going to increase the stretch here. And because it's isolated like this and I'm not falling down, I'm completely on balance, that really allows me to relax this muscle more. And then as I get better, I keep pulling that hip back and start leaning forward. All right. So same thing with this leg. You can see my hips squared up that way. I'm going to pull that hip so that my hips are squared up forward. And then that's really going to increase the stretch. Now this is a pretty high box for some people, especially shorter people. So if you need to just start on like your stairs, like the first or second step, or a lower box or lower riser, that's fine too. All right. The way I usually end my leg days is with a mobility stretch / exercise that is really good for stretching your quads and getting full range of movement in your knees. It's a body weight leg extension. So I start off on my knees, both knees, and then I start trying to sit back. All right. Some people might have trouble with this. All right. But what you can do is, if you're bending at the waist, it's going to be easier to come up. All right. As you get better at this, you can start staying straight as you go down, and just the difference in where the weight of my upper body is on that really changes the amount of stretch and the amount of weight that I'm moving when I do this. So there's a big difference between going like that and coming all the way through it. All right. Any questions? Is there anything that I missed that you would want me to cover? Abby? No? Mom? All right.
Good coverage.